Live, I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. It is beautiful fall weather, unless you're a Democrat in the United States. Today, a very rough election for President Joe Biden last night as Virginia, a blue state, turns red with the governorship, and New Jersey is still in flux. This is a state that Joe Biden in New Jersey won by 16 percentage points, and the governor's race is an absolute top upheaval. So we'll see how that breaks out. Closer to home, in Burrillville High School has been shut down and moving to distance learning because of an outbreak of COVID. So take a look at that article. We just broke it about an hour ago. Let's go to our friends over at Mott Chace. Nelson Taylor joins us. He's sort of the king guru from the Blackstone team, knows all, sees all in real estate on the east side of Providence. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me again, Josh.
Okay, lots of things, lots of little signals in the real estate market that are now beginning to break after this incredible run of month over month, double-digit price increases. You know, we're talking about the median price of a single-family home in Rhode Island is now $385,000 or $390,000. Want to ask you, you know this stuff as well as anybody. What are some of these indicators? And I'll hit on a couple. Fortune says price is going to keep increasing into 2022. We're going to see double-digit price increases again next year. The other is sort of the opposite direction. Zillow, which had been as hot a company in the real estate market as possible, excuse me, is laying off 25% of its workforce and is getting out of the house flipping business. Talk about those two indicators and what they say to you and what it means for Rhode Islanders.
Well, first and foremost, I think anybody who says they know is, absolutely incorrect, because none of us know what's going to happen. Certainly being a real estate agent, doing a lot of business as we do here in the Metroplex, we see the nuances of the everyday of the business. Potential instability of rates, that's a factor too, that you didn't mention. But basically in the marketplace, we are seeing maybe a little bit of a pullback. And I say that so hesitatingly, Josh, because I don't want buyers to think it's any easier to buy a house, that there are not bidding wars, that they don't have to do everything possible to float to the top. But we are seeing properties seeing not so many offers, instead of 15 to 20 offers in the first 3 days, maybe 3 or 4. The best properties at the best prices are still moving like gangbusters. Sellers who are overinflating their launch list price, we might see those properties stick on the market a little bit longer and even, heaven forbid, see some sort of price reduction.
Yeah, listen, I peek at this stuff all the time. A house in Upper Thames in Newport on the market for $699. I want to say the next day it was gone.
Right.
And $699 in Upper Thames would have been unheard of. This is a house that 3 years ago would have been $399 maybe, and now just gone. 24
right.
hours, 48 hours. So
there are signs of something happening. How it plays out, who knows? When it's going to play out, who knows? But I think you mentioned Zillow. I think that's big for most of the country and perhaps a sign for our part of the world. Zillow never really made it up here into our housing market because the algorithms for the type of properties we have just didn't make sense for them. But we are seeing, obviously, Zillow pulling back, layoffs, stuff like that. I think that is a bit of a sign for most of the country. I think in the hottest markets, big cities, and certainly Rhode Island has been one of the hottest markets in the country. We're not seeing a lot of that yet, but we could see some of it in the near future.
Are we seeing a split? Let me ask it this way. The Newports that I mentioned, the east side of Providence, the Narragansetts, the Watch Hills, South County, the hotter spots, Jamestown, are the hotter spots continuing on the same upward trajectory, but it may be the Situates and the eastern Cranston, that those are beginning to slow down a little bit?
No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think we are seeing Prices are still going up dramatically. Like I said, we still have, the best properties are moving extremely quickly. But what we're seeing is a little bit of a slowdown in the closed sales. So this quarter, third quarter, we are down 8.4%, I think is the number, in closed sales from this time last year. So not quite as robust. And I think, goes without saying that the sort of ancillary, secondary, tertiary markets are going to slow down before the primary markets do.
Rentals are still going up. We got data
Oh
yesterday
my
from a
God.
Is that, who's putting more pressure on who? Is rental putting more pressure on the sale of single-family homes, or single-family homes putting more pressure on rental?
Yeah, they're going hand in hand. I'm glad you mentioned that, because rentals are through the roof. Rentals are like the sales market. It is not unheard of for a $2,000 a month apartment to get bid up in a bidding war at $2,400 a month. It's again lack of inventory, and again that makes sense because so many people who might have purchased a single family if there was more single family inventory are now purchasing multifamilies to live in, which puts pressure on that market. Those tenants who are in there now need to find a new place to live. And the investment world is going crazy right now as well. So the investment aspect of the market, different from singles, different from condos, the investment property market is the only one still going up. Crazy gangbusters, higher percentage of closed sales, much higher than this time last year.
Yeah, I met with a developer who has just under 200 upscale apartment units in the market, and he said he has zero vacancies right now. Zero.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the name of the game. And, we have clients who are taking their equity off the table by selling a property now with the idea that they were going to rent for a year, let the market settle down a bit, and then re-enter when hopefully prices are softer. But they're finding it close to impossible to even find a rental. So strategy's backfiring just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very complicated. Add into it that you've got now those who have significant holdings in apartments are beginning to sell off,
Yes.
oftentimes to national. We saw that with family-owned, the Foundry complex, the Promenade apartment buildings, 450, 460. That been very stable, owned by the Guerra family and Tony Thomas for decades. They functionally took their winnings off the table. That goes to a big Boston developer. Listen, those rents aren't going down. They just made a major investment into that property. They're going to push those rents up.
Yeah. I mean, look, Rhode Island has, I've lived here, Josh, for 22 years. And certainly we've had our slips in values after the last crash. But an investment in Providence, in the Metroplex, in Rhode Island, is an amazing investment. It's proved to be an amazing investment cycle over cycle for owner occupants and investors alike.
Nelson, I just want to give you the good news. You've been here 22 years. That means you only need to live here 78 more years to be considered a native.
Be a local.
Yeah, so it's either one way, born here and grew up here, or 100 years of living here. In either case, you can be considered a native. So 78 more years.
Thank you.
Where do we go in the next few months? I mean, there's been a little bit of conventional wisdom that if you're thinking about selling, boy, you might want to sell now and catch this height of the market. Then you read the Fortune article that's talking about 10, 15, 20% up in 2022. If I were a prospective seller, I'm a baby boomer, the kids are gone, the pandemic's beginning to wind down. I don't want to say it's winding down, but it's beginning to wind down. I want to find that I don't need a 4,000 square foot house. Is this the time to pick up the phone and call Mott and Chace?
Well, so that's That's investment, right? When do you?
That's the
when do you get in?
million-dollar question, because every
Yeah,
house
when
is
do
$1
you
million
get in? When do
now.
you get out? And I think if you are thinking about maximizing your equity within this cycle, right? And again, real estate cycles here tend to be about 10 to 12 years, and we're absolutely at the top of that number. If you're trying to maximize your equity in this cycle, why risk it, right? It may go up more, but it also may go down a lot more. And if this is your sort of last hurrah, this is your last house, you're retiring, et cetera, I say don't take the risk. Um, so, if you're going to hold for another cycle, fine. Hold on to your property. It's going to be worth even more in the next 10 to 12 years. But we may see some sort of pullback in the next, we could see it in 4 months, we could see it in 14 months, who knows? But my personal belief is that we're going to see a little bit of a slowdown in inventory over the holidays and winter, which is natural. Typically, that affects prices in pushing them up, right? Because less inventory. I think we're going to have a gangbuster spring, and then I think we're going to see a little bit of reverberation start in the market sometime summer, fall.
And is
You
there
heard it
any,
here.
a last question, is there any bargains in the market? Is there, that's an exaggerated term, but is there
Yep.
anything you're seeing in value where, maybe it hasn't, that style of house, that geography, that whatever it might be, still has some opportunity for a first-time buyer or somebody trying to move up from that first-time house to that
Well,
second?
so I'm going to put my sales hat on and
Please.
say that with rates this low, it can be argued that even at an inflated price, it's still a value. If you're a long-term holder, you're going to save money at that 2.7% interest rate rather than waiting for some sort of 5-10% correction at a 5.5% interest rate. But the values in properties are the fixer-uppers. Somebody who's willing to put in some sweat equity into a property. There's a fine line where the value of a house doesn't make sense to a flipper, but it does make sense to somebody who can move into the property. The property works, it's habitable, and they can sort of do the slow renovations as they live in it. That's where the values are in this market.
There's a house when you're leaving, I think it's Warren, going into Bristol. It's on the left side headed towards Colt State Park.
Right.
And it's a big Victorian, big. And it's been abandoned or vacant and much deteriorated for, I want to say 30, 40 years, much of my life.
Right.
And, it's barely standing straight up. And there is now construction equipment around that house and dumpsters and storage.
Well, if I recall, I think that, and maybe I'm speaking before I do the research, but I think that's now part of a bigger development. I think they're also.
It could be. It's amazing that, to your point, that the fixer-uppers, everything is on the table right now. That house is somewhere between Boo Radley's house and the house that It's a Wonderful Life they moved into from a structural standpoint. But it is remarkable, everything. And I don't know if I'm wrong, but there's not, every piece of vacant land on the east side of Providence has virtually been gobbled up. I can't think of a single lot other than one over on like William Street or John Street that's for sale now. There's something that's gone up on virtually every single vacant lot on the east side of Providence.
Yeah. And we have a client who we're working with to do research on what properties have big enough lots that can be subdivided, and we're approaching those owners to see if they'd be willing to either sell the entire thing or subdivide part of their land.
Listen, I think we have a good-sized garage. It's a one-car garage, but I think 6 or 7 people could live in there. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Listen, Nelson Taylor from the Blackstone team at Mott Chace, Sotheby's International, thank you as always. It is great to have you on. Get the insight and the most up-to-date insights into what's going on the real estate market. I think whether you're in the game, buying or selling, or you're just an armchair Monday morning quarterback like myself, it is incredibly interesting to watch the ebb and flows of this industry right now. It is, I got to tell you, it's right there with politics in Rhode Island. Everyone is intrigued in what's going on in the real estate market. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, for everybody else, 1 o'clock, we'll have Dr. Michael Fine. He'll be Skyping in from Texas. He's on a road trip around the country. He'll be talking about the new updates on what's going on with the approval of vaccines to 5 to 11-year-olds. Big news nationally on that, as well as this outbreak in Burrillville, Rhode Island, which has forced the shutdown of the high school and a shift to distant learning for the next few days. Once again, showing that this virus may be improving, but is not gone away. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, get over to CVS, Walgreens, your doctor's office, someplace, and get vaccinated. Don't be that guy or that woman. Please, please be safe. Stay tuned for more updates.